So today is the sixth and the last session in the 6-week lecture series into the eternal wisdom. So far, we have touched upon how this profound wisdom can help us address various aspects. Firstly, we saw acquisition and enjoyment. We learned about happiness, how to relate to the world. And if you don't know how to relate to the world well, it causes stress that you have to learn to manage. One of the most important aspects of our lives is to be able to manage your own mind. Then we learned about how to lead a life of sattva, where you would be as industrious, as dynamic, as active, as prosperous as possible. At the same time, you will retain that inner peace and maturity. And lastly, we learned the last session about the emotional management. It's all the play of emotions. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, Bhaya. All the emotions arise out of desire. And if you are not able to manage your emotions, an uncontrolled mind causes havoc. It destroys your life. So today we will start with the eighth aspect. How does this wisdom help you to enhance your inner resilience? I would briefly touch on parenting. How do we learn to manage the multi-roles, the various roles that we have to play? And lastly, how does one live a fulfilled life? So those of you who are coming today, glad you could join us. So at any point you feel you have something to contribute, something to ask, something to clarify, please feel free, draw my attention, and you can communicate. So enhance resilience. Now, in order to understand this concept of enhancing resilience, we need to understand what is it that the world, what is the nature of the world, what is it that we are dealing with in life. There's a famous words from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the verse 14. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agamapayino nityaha tam stitikshasva bharata. As you all know, the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is just Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Arjuna is crackling in his despondent situation. So there's no much philosophy. In fact, the first chapter and few verses into the second chapter. So as the Lord starts speaking, Lord Krishna starts speaking in the second chapter, this is one of the most beautiful verses that comes up in the second chapter. In fact, second chapter is known as Sankhya Yoga. It is in fact the cream of the entire 18 chapters. It is known as the yoga of knowledge. Now, the verse reads, the sense contacts, O Kaunteya, which cause heat and cold, Ushna, heat and cold, pleasure and pain, understand that they come and go. They are impermanent. anityaha. Therefore, what do I do? How should I relate to these opposites that the world presents itself to me? How should I deal? I must understand, firstly, that they are impermanent. And when you are subjected through these opposites, you must understand, you must build this quality of titiksha. One of the most beautiful spiritual qualities to cultivate, to emulate, is titiksha. Titiksha, I'll explain. You must learn to endure them, O Bharata. So, when you understand the world, so what is the world? The world is, and the world can be defined as, world can be defined in many ways. The world can be defined in the context as pairs of opposites. The world is nothing but pairs of opposites. So what is the pairs of opposites? They are pairs of opposites at all levels of your personality. At the material level, you go through profit and loss. There is material gain, there's material loss. This keeps happening right through your life. At the emotional level, there is joy and sorrow. At the physical level, there is health and disease. As you know, the 5 metamorphic changes everybody goes through in life is birth, growth, disease, decay, and death. So in the process of the 5 metamorphic changes, you experience health and disease. These are inevitable aspects of life. You come across people who are extremely grateful to you. You can call them as those who really stand by you. They are your true friends. You can test them with hoops of steel, as Shakespeare says. Or there are people who are extremely ungrateful to you. As Shakespeare again says, it is stronger than traitors' arms, he says. You come across people, they are foe. The worst of them are ungrateful to you. They're stronger than traitors' arms. So you come across people who are the best and the worst. You go through intellectual level of honor and dishonor. You go through phases where people give you recognition for no reason. And when you duly deserve it, they take it away from you. So you have to deal with praise and censure and honor and dishonor. Now, in fact, of all that life that you have experienced, the little some of us have experienced, life will teach you a very bitter lesson, is that the world is these opposites. And question you got to ask yourself, how well are you prepared? How strong are you inwardly to be able to deal with these opposites? And if I were to tell you that all these opposites can be magnified to a point of fault, you can gain a fortune, you can lose your entire fortune. You can gain all the love, or you can be crucified on the cross. You too, Bruti, then fall Caesar. His own dear friend, Brutus, and conspirators assassin Caesar. So your best of friends can backstab you. The best of moments in your life, they are worst of moments in your life. You can never expect yourself to learn through the course of your life. Remember this. If you want to learn to deal with life during the course of life, it's like saying, I want to learn the skill of driving, having got onto the highway. Let me get onto the freeway. Let me get onto the expressway of life, and then learn how life is and what life throws at me. Nah, you can have a fatal accident within the first few minutes of your sitting behind the wheel, and that's it. You need to be prepared and then enter the world and start dealing with what the world throws at us. You cannot expect to plunge ill-prepared. And most minds, the most intellects that I deal with, all that we deal with are the minds and intellects of people. And most people are least prepared. The most educated people, the most qualified people, the well-celebrated people, graduates, postgraduates, they've done Harvard, they've done this, they've done that, name all that's possible. yet they don't know how to deal. They have not developed this titiksha because they have not imbibed this wisdom. As scientifically as you learn any other branch of knowledge, you must learn these instructions. I ask you, you ask yourself, have I taught this wisdom in a manner that it must be lived by to your children and your grandchildren? Are you giving these essential instructions to them that they have this know-how of life? It's not something you can pick it up along the way, my dear friends. It is not possible. Just like you learn the art of being a doctor and then you practice your medicine. There is no question of trial and error while you're practicing medicine. You can't be a qualified doctor. You can't be a qualified engineer or an architect or a chartered accountant. You can't mess with accounts of people. So learn through your accounts and mess with your numbers and figures. Nobody accepts that. So what makes you believe you can plunge into life and learn to deal with life without learning how to live? The biggest blunder of humanity. It cannot happen. And one test here is how resilient are you within you to be able to deal with what the world throws at you. Now, I'm not complaining. I'm only analyzing. That's my job. I'm only trying to let you all know how and where this wisdom fits into your place. You know, these are the famous words. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard about it. The famous words by Charles Dickens in the famous play, The Tale of Two Cities. I'm only trying to tell how universal this wisdom is, how applicable is this wisdom. As it reads, it is the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. I'm sure this can be the headlines of any major media. Any major print media can publish this as its headlines this morning, because it's as relevant to today's times as it was said then. So you have no choice but to learn to deal with the world which is opposites. You can't run away from that. Now, in fact, this is an example which, in fact, yesterday's satsang, ironically, we were talking about it, but some of you who are not there, it would be very fresh. And some of you who heard about it will be reiterating. Now, just take this example of a magnet, a very powerful magnet. The world is a very powerful magnet. And as you know, the trait or characteristics of magnet, it influences. And an iron piece, which is the human being, is easily influenced by the very powerful magnet. So wherever you go, the world influences you, isn't it? You like it or not. So the individual, the iron piece, is very heavily influenced by the very powerful magnet or horseshoe magnet, which is the world. And then there is this wooden piece that is the self. Now, when you bring a combination of if I were to tie up the metal piece and the wooden piece, and I were to bring the combination to the magnet, the combination gets attracted to the magnet, doesn't it? But while the magnet is influencing the combination, the wooden piece remains unaffected. The wooden piece remains uninfluenced by the magnet. Similarly, when you are being affected, when you are swayed by what are you swayed by? All of us are swayed by the crests and troughs of life. The waves of life rock the boat of the individual. You go through the ups and downs, but as you experience ups and downs, remember, in these two extremities, there is something called as the equilibrium, the medium. the goal, the primary purpose, to be a human, to be humane, is to try and get to that state of equilibrium while you're being subjected through these crests and troughs of life. You can't run away from them. You can't suffer. You can't abandon them. At the same time, you can't be subjected to them and suffer. So the question is, how do you maintain that equanimity? How do you reach that state of equanimity? If I may ask, Ashwati, to begin with, tell me, how do you reach that state of equanimity?
Hi, Guruji. Reaching the state of equanimity, not being affected by outside factors, I would say. So manage your expectations accordingly. That would be the first.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about, you're very true. You're right, what you said. We're not talking about expectations. We're not taking that line of thought. What we are talking about is how do you learn to endure, how to build that inner resilience that you're not tossed by the fluctuations of the world, right? Now, we gave an example. So using that line of thought, how do you get to the point where you remain unaffected by the world and keep your inner charm? Think along with me. So, always in a classroom, I find, not that you're saying here, but you may take examples or convey certain concepts, but from the audience, I always see people taking their own examples or think very differently, especially in a classroom when you are with a teacher who's taking you or sailing you through a certain concept. It is very important to think along with the speaker. You should not independently think. That way, what happens is the absorbing ability becomes maximum. You maximize the little interaction you have with the teacher or the guru. So if I can draw you back to the example, what is the example we just took?
The graph, right? With the crests and the throws.
That's the effect of being tossed. But the example we took about the magnet, can you spell it out for us?
Yes, so the magnet, which is the horseshoe, very, open to attracting, is very attracted by the outside world, which is, it's plausible. And you should be more of the wood, so it's not easily influenced by the outside factors.
So what is your advice to us? We start shifting all our furniture to pure teak wood? No, I know you're going with examples. So shift your attention to the wood, you said. So what do I do? What's that shift? One word which really struck very powerfully in me when I first heard about that English term, the English word which said you must bring about a paradigm shift in your life, in your thinking. Only when you bring about a paradigm shift in your thinking, then can there be a change in your life. And yesterday, somebody was asking me a question, and I used this term. Said, sir, you want to bring about a change in your life, you got to bring about a change, a paradigm shift in your thinking. Unless until you dare to change that mindset, you can't change the course of your life or the consequences. You can't continue to put in the same effort and expect the results to be any different. It cannot be. So you're right that you must shift your focus, change your identification. Where to? What to?
To the inward, right?
to the inward,
and to the
to
higher.
Yeah, thanks for qualifying, Ashwati. Very true. So I can go on, and you're right, very true. You need to shift your focus and attention away from all that you're identifying with to your inner self. Thanks, Ashwati. See, the nature of the self, as I've said in the example of the wooden piece, the self within is said to be a pure, objective witness to everything that's happening around. Remember, that is the very nature of the self. That is the nature of yourself. The self in you, the self in me is the same. You may be subjected to different situations and circumstances, but the result is you're being tossed and I'm being tossed. But if I have to get anchored to the self, I need to shift my focus off from the world to the self. Anand, if you are constantly associating with the business world out there, if you constantly think of business, what would you become?
Hariom Guruji. Yeah.
If you keep thinking of business, what would you become?
Yeah, I'm not sure I mean, you're thinking about, you're thinking about your business.
What would happen?
Are you? It depends on the person.
Yeah, but that person who's thinking of business, what would happen to him?
I mean, if you're talking, if, like you said, taking the example
Anand,
of before.
You're thinking too high. I'm just thinking very, very basic. So simple question. The problem is we are too wise, too much wisdom. We don't know how to answer a simple question. If you keep thinking of business, what would you become?
Businessman.
You would. That's all I wanted. You keep thinking of business day in and day out. What would you become? Become a business. You keep thinking of gambling. What do you become?
Gambler. Yeah.
A gambler. You keep thinking of philosophy. You become a philosopher.
Yeah.
So what is the underlying message we get there? This is the difficult part. What's the underlying message we get there? From a businessman, a gambler, and a philosopher. What's the underlying message?
I have to tie into what Ashwati said. You have to tie into your inner self and think higher. With a controlled mind. Right?
The Ashwati, she said, is right. But I'm asking this point: what is the underlying message in these three examples?
It is not become what you focus on. What do you think on?
You become where your attention is. The law of attachment, I think we did mention during the course of these 5 lecture series or 6 lecture series, that as you think, so you become. Now, when you become a businessman, what happens? Whatever the business fluctuations, the business ups and downs, the business pressures, the business demands, what would happen to you as a businessman?
You go to the troughs and press.
You have to go through the exact fluctuations or changes the business world goes through, you go through. Why are you going through? Because you have become the business yourself. You are representative of your business. You are the business, aren't you? If you are attached to your work, Anand, if I were to ask you this question, if you're attached to your work, what would happen?
Yeah, if you don't know how to control your, like you mentioned, your emotions would be controlled by how your work is changing.
So you will be subjected through all the emotions, what is carried out at work, all that egos, the politics, all that pressures, all that work demands, you are affected by it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the question is, how do I remain unaffected while I carry on my duties and responsibilities? You may be a businessman, I may be a philosopher, somebody may be an entrepreneur, or you may be a housewife or a student, or whatever that you're doing. How should I remain unaffected? How do I build that inner resilience that I'm not affected by all that happens around me? Is to remember that there is something in me like the wooden piece which is unaffected. If I identify with my body, mind, and intellect, the body, mind, and intellect is affected by heat and cold, by joy and sorrow, by honor and dishonor. The world influences my body, mind, and intellect. The world cannot touch or influence myself. So if I can shift my focus to that inner self, if I use this wisdom as a means to identify with that inner self, which is the path to get to that self, I will remain unaffected by it. So the whole quality you and I, we all need to practice is to develop that quality of detachment. You got to learn to be detached, to keep your independency and self-sufficiency as active as possible. The moment you become attached to something, you lose your independency. You become dependent. You become vulnerable. You suffer the consequences. So the only way out is to imbibe this wisdom in the most disciplined way. It's like you build your health in a disciplined manner of exercise, and not exercising once in a fortnight. Oh, sir, thank you. We got 6-week series. I've got all the wisdom. Now I don't need to do anything. Okay? This is just a teaser, perhaps to introduce you to what this wisdom can hold for you. Now you need to, if you find that there's a wealth of wisdom here, you need to dig this wisdom mine. We have a wisdom mine. You're all members of this mine, and say, please go and dig and take as much as you want. It's like I all let you loose. I don't know, you all have, I've not seen this in this part of the world. In US RPG, you have this, isn't it? You all people go into the woods and start digging for gold. I'm not saying anything wrong there. Is it? I've seen one or two documentaries here and there.
Panning for gold? Panning for
Sorry?
gold. You pan for gold.
Yeah.
The water comes out of the hills.
Yes. So they go about. It seems to be an industry there by itself, right?
I think
part-time industry.
Yeah, I think before, when there was much more gold, people were doing that, right? Now it's more of a leisure time, nostalgia. You know, this is how things were done in the 1800s, late 1800s, 1900s.
Are you taking me to one of those? I thought I'll also try my hand and luck there.
You go. It's not far from here, actually.
Yeah, good. Srinivasji will fix my itinerary. Please, Srinivasji, please fix that itinerary for, I'll bring back some gold from US. So the whole point is, how do you remain unaffected? So if you get detached, there is this very famous episode, I'm sure we have heard in different contexts. Adi Shankaracharya, along with his disciples, was walking towards his ashram, going with his few disciples behind him. A drunkard who came and stopped his way and started abusing, accusing, and he was not in his senses. So he went all out. And the students couldn't stand their guru being insulted in front of them. They were infuriated. They were actually pulling up their sleeves to teach that fellow a lesson of his life. Adi Shankaracharya he was not bothered. He did not react to anything that happened. He blabbered, he vomited, he vented, he heard, and the whole entourage continued where they had to go. Later that evening, the students couldn't hold back and they clarified, Master, Swami, why is it you didn't tell us that to teach a lesson to that fellow? How dare he spoke that way? And he said, what are you talking? Out of the context, these students clarified. What are you asking? He said, no, this morning you remember that man insulted you and so on. We couldn't stand that. To which he said, he gave his peace of mind. You people received it. You deal with it. I did not receive it. It's not my problem. You received it. It's your problem. Why are you identifying with whatever is happening in the world? There's so much of garbage in the world. There's so much of garbage in the minds of others. There's so much of unhealthy things that happen outside. Why are you identifying with it? You identify with it, you must learn to deal with it. If you know that capacity, if you cultivate that quality of not to identify with the negativity out there, you will have no problem. So that art of not identifying is detachment. And if you can cultivate that quality, and it is the quality of the intellect, my dear friends. So what is that you need to use? How do you apply this quality of titiksha to build your resilience? When you are being subjected through the ups and downs of life, remember the very powerful point we learned from the second chapter, the 14th verse. He said, understand they come and go. Understand their impermanent nature. When you understand their impermanent, you are not holding on to them thinking that is the be all and end all of life. I don't know about the education system there, but in India, all of you have an Indian origin, have some kind of an idea. The amount of pressure is on education to perform is so high. And whenever these competitive exams, public competitive exam results are released, and I've been saying from my very young days, I never understood until I got to this philosophy, why these young kids commit suicide. The next day, the papers are stained with suicides all over the country. Young minds, brilliant minds, 14, 15, 16, that's the age where their future is decided. I know the amount of pressure that was on me. I remember my father used to say, if you don't get good marks in your 10th, if you don't get good marks in your 12th, you will become a waiter. You'll become a server in a restaurant. That was a standard dialogue to me. And no wonder all that became so heavy. I wanted to do hotel management. Thank God that evening I met my guru and it changed the whole course of my life. Otherwise, I would have been serving somewhere. But literally, may not be in a dhaba. It might would have been in a fine dining restaurant somewhere. I'll be serving. Ashwati, please don't laugh at me like that. I feel very, very. How can you laugh at your guru like that? Please don't do that.
Sorry, Vinayji, it's just too funny. I'm happy that you met Swamiji and yeah, got you on the right track. Now you're here.
The interesting thing is when I went to the ashram, I was there for 4 years, 4+ years. First thing, everything in the academy was managed by the students, so we didn't have any external administrators. The irony of it is when I went to the ashram, where I was put in charge of kitchen department. So for the 4 years in the ashram, I was taking care of kitchen, not knowing what is tuar dal, urad dal, this dal, that dal. I didn't know a head or tail of it. And I was just 16. I was just 16. I didn't know anything of it. At every meal, hundreds of meals were served. Hundreds of people were taken care of. I had to manage. I didn't know my calling for the kitchen that never leave me, But after I left the ashram, I have never entered any kitchen. So RPG, don't expect me to enter your kitchen and cook something there. I am complete no there. That is no entry board for me there. So I don't know what was I saying. What was I saying, Ashwati?
You were saying that you would not want to step in the kitchen because
no, that I know. But I'm talking of I'm talking, what is the philosophy? We have lost our track. I need to get back to the track. What's the concept I was saying? Gayatri-ma,
You were
what
saying
was I
that
saying?
you should be impartial
Bhagavad
and you
Gita.
shouldn't be detached.
Bhagavad Gita, that all these are ephemeral and it keeps changing, pass on.
They all come and go. Everything in the world is impermanent. They come and go. And I took an example of these young minds. Their life collapses and they commit suicide. Now, Ravi Shankar ji, please tell me, why would these young minds go to a point where they commit suicide, sir?
Ram Guruji. Yeah, because they think that is the, if they don't perform, that is the end of life. There is no other way. So
Who's responsible for that?
basically their parents and the teachers at that
Parents,
location.
the teachers, the
Parents,
society.
primarily society. Yes, yeah.
So
Parents
while,
are
sorry, go ahead, please.
yeah, parents are in turn affected by the society. They think if their kids don't perform, that is it will be a burden for them.
So the whole system is a vicious cycle.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
we all are victims of that system that we have created. What do you call that? A Frankenstein, they call, no? I have created it and I have become a victim of it. Who created the system? I created the system. And who becomes a victim? I become a victim of my creation. So this education system has become a Frankenstein. It is doing Tandava on our head. You get it?
Yes. Of course, the excessive competition is also a factor in that. There are less opportunities and more people. So
Who's to blame? We are only producing, no?
correct.
Oh.
Yeah.
You produce and you create competition and then you blame.
Mhm.
You see,
Yeah.
now everybody has opportunity, sir. But to say that there is more competition and to put that pressure on those innocent minds, little pure children, young minds, and to believe that if I don't make that 95, 96, 97%, life comes to an end.
Mhm.
And they can't think a way out of facing what would be my future if I don't get that amazing pressure. My God, if you can motivate them to bring their best out, than putting them the pressure into their life through them, you see, in fact, if we have taught them that you should be able to face the greatest of loss and endure that, never mind, it is bound to happen. You may fail. That is not the end of life. How many times have you not failed in your life, sir? In different aspects of your work career? Have we not all failed?
Yeah.
Have we not fallen short of our own expectations, forget others? So how can we be unrealistic with reference to them? How can we be so lopsided in our thinking that we should prepare them to cultivate this quality of titiksha and perhaps help them to deal with much greater challenges in their lives? Do you know how many marks you've got in your schools and colleges? Does it matter to you now, sir? Does it matter to anybody in this classroom? No. But at that moment, the world comes to an end. Sad. I'm only trying to tell the gravity of problem. In fact, if we don't see that problem as a passing phenomenon, we make it a
Permanent problem.
permanent problem.
Yes.
So don't make a passing phenomenon a static reality. The problem with our little minds is we make a passing phenomenon a static reality, and that reality starts daunting on you, and it starts defining your life. So let not be defined by moments. Understand they are impermanent. Understand they come and go. So learn to endure difficulty with pleasure. Thanks, Raviji. So the quality of titiksha is this. Venkatji, I don't know whether, good to have you, sir. I don't know whether you ever heard this beautiful quality of titiksha.
No.
Ah,
Very, very nice to meet you and see you now for the
thank
first
you, sir.
time.
Pleasure.
Hi
Pleasure
to
is
all of
mine
you.
as well. Yeah, thank you. Namaskaram to Amma as well.
Thank you. Namaskaram to you.
Namaskar, namaskar. So this quality of titiksha, in fact, it is very prevalent in our the Eastern communities, especially in our culture. You find people have the capacity to face or go through any inconvenience with a smile.
Mhm.
And a classic example we are often given is, let's say we in India, at least in particular here, if you get any unexpected guests, and if they have to stay with you, you with great pleasure accommodate them. With great
Yes.
pleasure, we give them our bedrooms, and we say, please, I don't mind roughing it out in the sofa or sleeping in the living room out there. That capacity to go through inconvenience with the pleasure is very much, that is what's the tiksha.
Ah, I see.
So you go through inconvenience. You are prepared to go through tough situations or phases of life, but with a smile on your face. And that's the quality the Gita, 2nd chapter, 14th verse says, if you want to build the resilience, you must have the capacity to endure them with a smile. That is titiksha. And this is not taught, sir. I hope you share these observations.
I do. In the US, can I say something simple quickly?
Please.
So
Absolutely,
I think
please.
the point you were making is sort of stated very simply in the US. Oftentimes, it's when you experience bad times, tell yourself, this too shall pass. So pretty much everything that bad happens eventually, just like you said, we don't care about what grades we made before, because if you could have told yourself at that time that this too shall pass, it would have gone away, essentially.
It would have taught you a lesson, a valuable lesson, but then it would have not defined you, isn't it? Absolutely. A very,
True.
very right expression of the quality titiksha. In fact, there's a poem, I don't know, you're referring to the same poem. There's a poem called Even This Shall Pass Away by Theodore Tilton. Theodore Tilton writes this poem, and he talks about in the poem where a person goes through various phases of his life. He sees himself 40 cubits in there. In fact, he's a prince. And he says every phase of life, he talks about his phase of marriage. He talks about on a deathbed when he was being crowned as a prince, and when he was in the battlefield. So when he faces different phases of his life, and then he said, at the end of that, each para, he would say, remember, even this shall pass away.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
if I'm able to instill that quality of titiksha, so the problem is we are all obsessed with having pleasurable things all the time, sir.
In the case of the children who commit suicide, it has much more to do with their immature mind at that point. I mean, all of us here would be able to put up with that kind of pressure, but the children at that age simply cannot take it. So,
Sir, I absolutely agree with you. But in fact, I come across people who come and open up their inner minds to me. And I have had people coming and telling me that they wanted to end their life because of their marital issues.
that's true.
What is for a child, a young couple will have marital issues. Recently, I came across in the social media so much. In fact, you want to look for this, you will have no dearth of information. A young, when I say young, a successful entrepreneur in US, he and his wife and his daughter killed themselves because he was in a big financial trouble.
Yes.
And their bodies were found in the huge mansion because he was going through a financial problem. So what is for a child to face with digits and numbers and percentage is for the same with an entrepreneur businessman. He's trying to liquidate his assets, or he's trying to make something out of his business empire, and that has not gone well, and that he finds a reason that now I should end my life.
True, it's true.
And as I say this, each of us may have something that is pounding on you right away. And if I were to look at that phase of life, it could be insecurity. It could be insecurity of your job. It could be insecurity of being lonely. It could be anticipation of what you might want something from the world. It could be something out there could cause you a sense of uneasiness. Remember, understand, it shall pass. Understand, desirable and undesirable are inevitable aspects of life. Whatever can be corrected, correct them. What can't be corrected, endure them and move on. And
Yes.
if I cultivate this quality and keep enhancing my resilience, the greatest of loss is no loss to you. Imagine I get a call this moment that one of my very near dear family member is no more. Just example, please. I don't want to put you in the situation. I'm putting myself in the situation. My phone rings, I answer the call, I get a news that my family member is no more. How will I be able to deal with that loss? The greatest loss is no loss. If you think, I know what life is, raise the bar. You know where you will buckle. Somewhere down the line, you'll buckle because you don't have the capacity to deal with opposites. The maximum opposite that you deal with is birth and death, isn't it, sir? You know, I remember my relative of mine, I don't want to mention who and where, she had a third child who was a stillborn child. 2 healthy kids. Third child was a stillborn child. I remember I was very young, and I remember this very vividly because the situation was so bad that in the hospital, somehow she got access to pesticides and she drank pesticide. Not in the hospital. In fact, after all that, she came back home. I remember their family does pesticide business. They were distributors of pesticides. She drank a bottle of pesticide to commit suicide. Now you can feel for the lady, for the mother, to have lost a child. I don't see a difference between that young kid wanting to commit suicide because didn't get the marks, or this young lady wanting to commit suicide because she had a stillborn child. No difference. All it's happening is they can't deal with it. May not mean anything for me, but it's everything for that child. Business is going down the drain, may not be for me, but for that man, business is everything. He worships business day in and day out. So whatever be the situation your life puts you through, you must understand it is not worth being a slave to it. You must learn to be a master. The only way you can is by building this quality of inner resilience. Thanks, Venkatji. Lovely interacting. I'm sure there's a lot more to interact with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Arpitji, thank you.
Just, I think a great example, going back to one of the poems, is Milton's On His Blindness, right? He was blind, and, you know, he was a poet. And so this whole, you know, he just, that resilience to continue going. And then at the end to say, you know, even those that wait, they're just as involved, just, you know, that they're still doing their part. And I think that's another great example that Swamiji, you know, gives us as part of his repertoire of poems. You know, I think it's a great example of resilience and just sticking through it. You know, even though he was brilliant and all that, but he couldn't write because he couldn't see.
They also serve who stand and wait.
Also serve, that's it.
The famous words of John Milton in his sonnet on his blindness. Thanks for that. So, talking of it, the next aspect we all need to, you may say, so I am not a parent. Okay, add grand there. You may be a grandparent or a great grandparent, doesn't matter. A very important aspect how parenting plays a pivotal role. We just took some examples, and how parenting, Raviji mentioned as well, that parenting plays a pivotal role in molding your child. So a couple of points I want to highlight here. I'll explain. Just take a note, these two aspects. I remember taking a workshop on parenting. This was a full day workshop, and I'm just giving a couple of points here. So you can't expect me to pack in everything in a short lecture series like this, but it's just to give a teaser or a panoramic view how wisdom can help. So how wisdom can help in parenting is, firstly, it talks about how a parent must lead the way but never show the way. And then a very important aspect, that a parent should know the difference between pure love vis-a-vis a preferential attachment. This is applicable in any relationship. Now, the first point, that a very famous verse from the Gita, the chapter 3, the verse 21, he says, Yadyada charati shresthaha tattadevetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanu vartate. Very, very famous verse where it says, whatsoever a superior person does, that alone other people do. Yadyada charati shresthaha tat eva itara janaha. Others will do whatever standards you set. Yat pramanam kurute lokas tadanu vartate. That standards the whole world follows. So it is the job of a leader to ensure that he does not constantly show the way, but lead the way. Very, very famous words. Now, as a parent, I see most parents, before I mentioned the double mistake, every parent does a double mistake. Before I mention of that, Abraham Lincoln, he says there's just one way to bring up a child in the way he should go, and that is to travel yourself. You want to bring your child in a particular way, you will have to do it yourself. You can't expect you not to do what you want your child to do. If I want my child to be disciplined, the only way I can let my child be disciplined is by me being an example. Am I a role model for my child? Would your child consider you as a role model? Ask yourself that question. Am I doing enough for my child to consider me? Who is role model for your kids nowadays, for your child? Some celebrity out there, some fellow, some rock star, some fellow out there, they start imagining. And what you see, all the celebrities on screen, off screen, their lives are completely contrasting. What example they set on screen and what their lives on screen are, actually, they don't walk the talk. So a most important quality of a leader here in the context of a parent is to set the standards for them to follow. When you don't walk the talk, it sets the disparity. So a job of a leader is to set the standards. So the double mistake, the two mistakes we do is, as a parent, we don't set the standards. First mistake is we don't set the standards. SR, what is our next mistake?
Next mistake, Guruji, is we don't follow the standards.
No, that's what, you don't set the standards. First mistake is you don't set the standards.
And we don't set the standards and we do.
Maybe I'm expecting too much, but just to think along, two mistakes every leader does is they don't set the standards. It can be a parent or any leader. Second is,
You don't practice it.
that is setting standard. No? If I don't set the standard, means I don't practice it. I'm not an example for the child. That's the first mistake. No problem, sir. Yeah. Raviji, any idea? I couldn't lip read you. That's why I'm saying, please.
Don't follow the standards that you set. After you, if you set standards, then not setting the standards is one mistake. If you set the standards, not following them is the second
I put them in one category, sir.
one. Okay.
So it's not putting one on paper and putting practice. See, you know why I put it in one category? In philosophy, there is nothing as theory and practice, sir. In philosophy, if you know it, you must live it.
Okay.
It's not knowing one thing and living another thing. So in philosophy or Vedanta, if I claim to know it, I must live it. So there's no question of me knowing what the standard.
Expecting your child to do what you cannot do. So what you did, or putting your desires or your what you missed in life, that you expect your child to achieve them. So you are looking at your child as your second life, like so.
Looks like it's no more double mistake. There are more than a couple of mistakes, you know. So the list is going to be long. In fact, in the context, you're not wrong at all, sir. But in the context of what I'm saying, the double mistake is, one is we don't set standards. Second is we give them lectures, we sermonize.
Okay.
We constantly keep telling them what to do, what not to do, don't we, as parents?
Yeah.
So in my workshop on parenting, I tell them a parent should be an actor, not a director. So don't play a role of a director directing them what to do. Play a role of an actor. You do it yourself and let them follow and see you as an example. That's important. So what would be the opposite of this then? The opposite of not setting standards and sermonizing. Double mistake. First of all, I don't set the standard. A simple example is I tell my child, get early to bed, early to rise. As we all have heard that. Now, I don't follow that. Late into the night, I'm watching movies and what is called this? What do you have nowadays? Ashwati, what do you watch late nights? I know, don't tell me. Mama has told me all about you.
I will sleep at 9 o'clock. I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't. I know
I
that. I
plead the
know. You
fifth.
all are very. But what do you call nowadays? You have these, no? Some
Sitcoms
it's a new craze.
and TV series. Yeah.
Series. Something TT, OTT. What is that? OTT, no? What is OTT? Some TT they were saying.
YouTube.
And then, no. Some, I don't know. They nowadays, nobody goes to the theaters. Everybody's seeing on their own personal tab. Some series keeps going on, you know. They get hooked on to these series. So imagine, okay, whatever it is, you know, you hooked on to these programs late into the evening and you get up late in the morning. But what's the lecture you give to the child? Beta, you must get to bed early and get up early. It's good for your health. So what is the disparity? You are not practicing. Secondly, you're lecturing. Poor fellow child has no choice but to listen to all your lecturing. Now, what is the mindset of the child to the parent? Vasantama, if a parent continues to do continuously like this, what is the effect? What is the perspective or perception of a child to the parent?
Why do I need to follow when my parents are not following?
You are very, very sweet, you are saying. Yeah? Very softly you're saying, but you're going to come out a little harder. What is the attitude of a child to the parent who does this double mistake? No respect for that parent. They will not listen to them, as you rightly said, isn't it? You don't become a role model for them.
Respect. Millions are self-respect. That's very true.
I know you and Setuji have been great parents. I can see that in Anand. Anand, tell me what's the opposite of that? There you go. So what is the opposite of the double mistake?
I mean, setting standards and following your own standards, and instead of sermonizing, taking action.
Huh?
And
What action will take?
Following the actions that following the standards that you set.
That
yourself.
Is standards. You follow the standards. Yeah. Second is?
Don't sermonize.
Don't sermonize, that's all.
Yeah.
Just don't say anything. So one of the fundamental qualities every human requires is, what is that fundamental quality every human being needs and enjoys?
Sermonizing.
Don't say that. No, I'm saying if you have to grow, what is that one quality everybody needs?
To learn. Yeah.
No, to learn, to grow. What is that quality you need?
Humility.
I know it's difficult to read my mind, but I'm just thinking in the context. Any idea, Venkatji?
Can you make slightly now?
Sorry, you're muted, sir.
I said it's a very open-ended question. Can you give us a little?
Indeed.
Give us a little more lane to go after, I guess.
I get it. No, in the context of the discussion, see, we constantly expecting our child to grow, and then we are imposing what to do, what not to do, and trying to bring them as polished versions.
Yeah.
But in the process, it does more damage, as I said, because we don't set standards and we sermonize. So So we are not giving them the word or the quality I'm looking at. In fact, is we're not giving them the freedom for them to express themselves first, isn't it?
I see.
As if every human fundamentally wants that freedom to express. If you don't give the freedom for a child to express, where is the opportunity for the child to discover what they are, what their potentials are, or how do you nurture them? So the angle I was coming from is this, sir. The freedom is essential in everybody's lives. But when it is not punctuated with discipline, freedom minus discipline leads to licentious. The problem is parents have the fear, if we give the freedom to the child, what will happen? They'll become licentious. And licentious is dangerous. To have a license to do anything under the sun is dangerous. But you give them the freedom, and the discipline here, Venkatji, would be?
What was it again? Sorry?
You give them the freedom.
Yes.
It's essential. But the discipline, where does a discipline in a child come from?
You impose it as a parent?
That is what I'm saying. If your movement you're imposing is sermonizing, you don't impose discipline on a child. You become an example of discipline. You set the standards. So when I set the standards, when I live that life of higher values, of discipline, culture, mannerism, or whatever I want my child to live by, I become an example and give the freedom. Let the child choose what the child wants to do. But I am as a pillar of an example for the child to follow. As a beacon of light, I am there to guide the child. That brings about a true transformation. But if I don't set the standard, and if I don't give the freedom and say, do this and don't do that, it is not going to help mold a child. In fact, the law of life is anything forced is never forceful. You're trying to force your child or force children or force others to follow a life of discipline. It doesn't work until they understand the need to be self-disciplined. Inculcate that quality to discipline themselves. You get where I'm coming from, sir?
Mm-hmm. Is it somewhat roughly, I think the expression, don't do as I say, but do as I do. Is that something that people talk about here? Are you kind of saying that? I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
More, to a large extent, yes. Do what I do, not what I say.
Right.
But a true leader doesn't draw a disparity in what they do and what they say. They do walk the talk. But if you want to be more impactful and influential, the only way you can be impactful and influential is to do it yourself. Lead the way. Be an example. That's what a Shrestha or a man of perfection, whatever he does. And if a CEO of an organization or the head of a department, if he himself is indisciplined or he himself is corrupt, you can't expect your subordinates or your employees to be clean sheet. They will also stoop to unethical ways and means because the leader does the same way. It doesn't set the right tone in the organization, does it?
Yeah. You're right.
In that sense. Right, sir. Thank you. Now, moving on to the second aspect of parenting is to cultivate a pure emotion of love. That quality of love is one of the most misunderstood qualities, often used, most abused, and distorted concept of love. Today, the concept of love is totally distorted. I'm sorry to say. Now, see this. Get a hold of this definition, and then you may want to contemplate on this later, because I'm only giving you a bird's eye view of what this is. Now, love plus selfishness is attachment. Today, what people call as love is actually selfishness. It's stained with selfishness. It's actually attachment. But what is pure love is attachment minus selfishness. So today, in the name of love, it's everybody trying to satisfy their preferential attachments. All of them have something to gain out of that emotional relationship. So it is not in terms of thinking of the recipient, is all the time thinking about themselves. So as a parent, the parent should not give in to this weakness of developing an attachment to the children. I can't think of a parent who is not attached to their child. And I'm myself a parent. And the quality I try to practice is, I don't want to be attached to my child. I would want to give all the love I can give to my child, but not have an attachment to my child. What is attachment? Attachment is a selfish relationship in your emotional association with a person or a being. The moment you think, what can I get out of the relationship is attachment, and any attachment spoils it all. And above all, lastly, you should, as a parent, prepare them to face what's in store for life. Give them the knowledge of life and living. You may give them every other skills to swim, to dive, to play, to sing, to dance. You may put them in the best education institutions, but all of that will not teach them how to deal with life. So the ultimate skill, Swami Ramatirtha says, if you have not taught them how to live life, you have not been as successful as a parent. You're a failure as a parent, Ramatirtha says. Okay. Now, as I said, I'm not doing justice, but due to paucity of time, I've rushed through, and I would seek a little more time from you all. I would like to conclude this last aspect, which is managing various roles. I think I have a couple of aspects, maybe another 10 minutes, please. You all with me? Thank you. So managing various roles. Now, whenever we talk of managing various roles, remember there are two factors. There is you, the actor, and then the roles that you play. You must learn to segregate these two. You as an actor play the role of a father or a mother or a son or a daughter or a daughter-in-law or a mother-in-law or a manager or a CEO or a player or a captain. You can be a neighbor or a citizen. You can be a teacher or a student. Whatever role that you play, these roles are different from the actor. Learn to segregate them. As the very famous words of William Shakespeare, he says, all the world is a stage, and all men and women are mere players. They have the exits and the entrances, and the one man in his time plays many parts. All of us are playing many parts in our life, but we all look at the world as a stage, and you're playing mere roles. So life is about playing your roles, understanding that the role is different from the actor. In fact, the actor, when can you play the role well? When you understand that the actor has got nothing to do with the role. The moment you understand that the actor has got nothing to do with the role, you will find you play your role well. If I may play the role of a beggar, the problems of the beggar doesn't affect the role of an actor. It doesn't affect the role of an actor. I may be playing the role of a prince. The riches of the prince, does it help me to pay my loans or debts? It doesn't. Now, but the problem is the roles that you're playing is affecting you. Why? Because of your unnecessary bondage that you have developed to the role. You believe the actor to be the role. Separate the role from the actor. You understand. You get into the beauty of each role that you're playing. So one of the an important tip I can give you is when you operate on your intellect with wisdom, you will learn to end your perception with perception. So when the role ends, I must stop playing that role and put on another role. Now I am the guru here. I am the teacher here. If I take this role, I carry this role. After the class, I go back home. If I play the role of a guru, I'm in trouble. I have become the father or the husband or the son. The father will say, hey, make sure, please check whether the milk has come. I have to go and check whether the milk has come. Hey, where is my newspaper? Okay, I have to go. I can't say I'm the guru here. I can't check whether the newspaper has come or the milk has come or the milk boy has come or that is there. I have to play the role. I can't carry on that role. I need to put on that garb and play the role. Whatever that obligation demands, play that role, live in the present. Don't carry forward. The problem people have is they carry forward their roles. So you carry your work to your home, you take your emotions to your work, you can't end perception with perception. So if you are able to end your perception with perception, you will be able to play your roles well, understand it's just a role and move on. In fact, understand you are not playing the roles for happiness. Indeed, you perform the role out of happiness. Now we are performing the role to be happy. But once you live a life of happiness and fulfillment, if the actor is, as a human, if you are complete and wholesome, every role you play is very holistic. And that takes me to the last aspect, is how to achieve this state of a life of fulfillment. What is to live that fulfilled life? And there's only one way you can reach and live a life of fulfillment, is by asking this fundamental question and having an answer to this question, what is my dharma? The entire Bhagavad Gita is sandwiched between these two words, mama dharma. Mama is my, dharma is nature. So what is your dharma? What is your nature? You know everything about and about, but you don't know enough of yourself. The famous words of the Kenopanishad. Iha cheda vedi data satyamasti na chediha vedin mahati vinashtihi bhuteshu bhuteshu vichitya dhiraha pretyasma lokadamruta bhavanti. Very, very famous verse from the mantra from the Kenopanishad. He says, if one knows that which is the truth, then truth is established. If it is not known here, it is the greatest loss. Having reflected through every element, the wise have risen from the world, have become immortal. You become, so if you don't realize that dharma, if you don't realize that very purpose of life, if he who has not fulfilled the purpose of life, he says, Mahati Vinashti, it is a supremely great loss. It is the greatest loss. So you may have everything else in your life. You may acquire everything else, name, fame, power, position, family, status. You can ask for everything you want to acquire it. But I will guarantee you, I'll put my life on that statement, you will not achieve fulfillment. But one who gets to that very source of that, the source of that, which even the mantra says, the source of that is this, the very famous mantra from the Upanishad, the invocatory prayer. Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnamevavashishyate. So that self within you is that Purnam, is that whole. The nature of yourself is Paripurna. Only when you shift your focus from the worldly pursuits onto your inner self, that is when you attain fulfillment. Any amount of external pursuit and aggrandizement is not going to create a fulfillment. In fact, it is only going to create a void within you. Either you realize it now, or you will realize it, I don't know when. There's a very, very famous saying, a wise man is one who learns from others' mistakes, a fool from his own. If you don't learn that there is no fulfillment in any external pursuit, you learn from others. I don't know, we don't even learn from our own mistakes. We are colossal fools. I'm not here to criticize or condemn, please pardon my language, but I'm only here to tell what the Shastras are roaring the truth, that to draw us to the higher purposes. So my dear friends, with this, a glimpse into this wisdom through this 6-week eternal lecture series comes to a conclusion. I know Venkatji is amidst us, and he's a great singer. I've been requested, if I can request Venkatji to just sing a short invocation, a prayer, or a song, whatever you think is apt, sir. Maybe a minute or two, please. And then we'll conclude, we wrap it up. We're already short by 6 minutes. Thank you.
The first stotram from the Ashtalakshmi, and of this Adi Lakshmi stotram. Sumanasa vandita sundari madhavi, Sumanasa vandita sundari madhavi, Sumanasa vandita sundari madhavi, Chandra Sahodari Hemamaye Sumanasa Vandita Sundari Madhavi Chandra Sahodari Hemamaye Sumanasa Vandita Sundari Madhavi ಮುನಿಗಣಮಂಡಿತ ಮೋಕ್ಷಪ್ರದಾಯಿನಿ ಮುನಿಗಣಮಂಡಿತ ಮೋಕ್ಷಪ್ರದಾಯಿನಿ ಮುನಿಗಣಮಂಡಿತ ಮೋಕ್ಷಪ್ರದಾಯಿನಿ ಮಂಜುಳವಾಸಿನಿ ವೇದನುತೆ ಮುನಿಜನಮಂಡಿತ ಮೋಕ್ಷಪ್ರದಾಯಿನಿ ಮಂಜುಳವಾಸಿನಿ ವೇದನುತೆ ಸುಮನಸ ವಂದಿತ ಸುಂದರಿ ಮಾಧವಿ ಪಂಕಜವಾಸಿನಿ ದೇವಸುಪೂಜಿತ ಪಂಕಜವಾಸಿನಿ ದೇವಸುಪೂಜಿತ ಪಂಕಜವಾಸಿನಿ ದೇವಸುಪೂಜಿತ ಸದ್ಗುಣ ವರ್ಷಿಣಿ ಶಾಂತಿಯುತೆ ಜಯ ಜಯ ಮಧು ಸೋದನ ಕಾಮಿನಿ जय जय हे मधु सूदन कामिनी जय जय हे मधु सूदन कामिनी जय जय हे मधु सूदन कामिनी आदिलक्ष्मी सदा पालय मां सुमनस वंदित सुंदरी माधवी चंद्र सहोदरी हेममये सुमनस वंदित सुंदरी माधवी Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Really touched our hearts. Thank you. Yes, Anand, please.
Yeah, no, thank you, Guruji. Before you close out, I just wanted to thank you for the 6-week lecture. I think it started as ideation very quickly at the start of the year and translated into this lecture series for the US audience. And I think you got a taste of what is coming. Guruji has planned a tour for the US in September and early October. And we are planning for on-site lectures at Philadelphia, Dallas, Houston, and New Jersey, and a few more places. So if you would like, I would encourage you all to reach out if you have any questions, and also get an opportunity to hear live the lectures as well as meet with Guruji. But primarily, I wanted to thank Guruji for taking the time, and also the rest of the Wisdom Foundation members to call in from India and participate in this lecture series. Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you. Hari Om.